Welcome to Midlife Matters. I'm Marie, and each week I'm joined by my friends Julie and Mindy to talk about all the topics keeping women in the middle years up at night. Today we're talking about becoming a mother-in-law. Join us as we share how we felt, how it's going, and what we hope to see in the future. Let's get started. Listeners, today we're talking about being a mother-in-law, and we have gotten this request on multiple occasions from multiple listeners, and today we are finally going to talk about it. And I'm not sure why we've put it off, just that we feel like it has the potential to be a touchy topic. There's a lot of feelings around this topic. You see a lot on social media, mostly bad portrayed about this topic, and we just have been reluctant to pick it up. But we know that we have experiences to share, and we hope that this discussion of our experiences is helpful to listeners. Mindy and Julie, have you guys anticipated this talk? Have you looked forward to it?
I would definitely say there was a lot of intrepidation, both with Bryce and I. And honestly, we only have a son-in-law. We don't have daughters-in-laws yet. And our feelings are different concerning daughters-in-laws and son-in-laws, because for some reason, like Bryce had maybe a harder time thinking about adding a son-in-law, and he teases me about having a harder time with adding daughters-in-laws, if that makes sense. You know, the joke is like these women, these girl issues, like these women have hard times. Thankfully, like the Lord has really blessed us with our son-in-law, and I can't wait to talk about that relationship. But yes, you really do. I think because there's so much negative attention put on that, you kind of come into it with some fear, some anxiety. You don't really know. You don't want that. But yes, there's intrepidation.
Yeah, I think the stereotypes have kind of prepared us for like nightmare situations, and I think it would be better if we just kind of assumed we were all going to get along, like to start from that perspective. And my perspective is a little different in that I never had a mother-in-law. My husband's mom died when he was a child, so I don't even have that to go on. You know, so I really didn't think personally that it was going to be a bad situation because I didn't have that. I just didn't have a situation. So a lot of my perspective today is going to come from how I saw my husband and my parents interact.
Okay. How about you, Marie?
Similar to you, Mindy, definitely had way more intrepidation about gaining a daughter-in-law than I did a son-in-law. And I think there's some societal reasons that I'm going to talk about later, and also just family history reasons why. But yes, I was nervous.
Societal reasons being all movies.
Right. And
thank you.
All books. Yeah. But first, just to kind of start out the episode, why don't we just explain who we are mother-in-laws to? So I am a mother-in-law to my daughter's husband, Nick, and I am a mother-in-law to my son's wife, Maddie.
I'm only a mother-in-law to my daughter's husband right now, but my one son is in a very serious relationship, so I do consider her like family. I treat her as a daughter-in-law. I'll be considering her in this discussion.
Okay. And I am mother-in-law to my daughter's husband, Joey.
Okay. Well, let's go a little bit deeper into the were you nervous about becoming a mother-in-law before you became one? Like, what were some of your feelings? And I think, has there ever been a saying that did more damage in my life than the saying, a son is a son till he takes him a wife, but a daughter is a daughter all of her life? It almost makes me cry to even say it now. I heard that saying from the time I was a child. Like, my grandmother had a negative view of daughter-in-laws, which I heard in the background of my childhood. Then my mother had negativity around the mother-in-law relationship. She kind of also perpetuated the idea that once your son was only your son for a time. My aunts, it was pervasive in the family that you're going to have a son and you are going to love this son. And when they are in their 20s, it's a crapshoot as to whether you'll even see them again. and
Mhm.
your relationship will probably be fractious. There will be unspoken resentments, unspoken conflict. There will be things that are picked up on by other family members, but you never talk about it. Like, there just was so much negativity, and I don't think that anyone set out to do that. But that was the impression that I had as a child sitting at the feet of my family at
Wow.
family gatherings and listening. And so when I had a son, I almost immediately started the dread of losing him. And I have 2 sons. And so it just was a very damaging message to receive. And I think I stuffed that message. And you can talk to friends over the years, and I would even bring it up with my friends, my fears of this, and they would be like, why do you feel that way? Or, yeah, that's true, but that doesn't have to be true. But your family influence is so much greater than friends. Like, what you've lived and breathed and grown up with is so much greater. Like, you need an experience, not just words, to change that. So as the time approached for my son to get married, I seriously felt like I was walking off a plank. Like, I was facing a death. Like, on their marriage date, nothing would be the same ever again. And I couldn't expect it to ever be the same. And so I went into the wedding even just with a lot of deep sorrow, like just sadness. And that has been something that I have since, 5 years later, I can, tell listeners that I don't feel that way, but it was like this pre-programmed thing that was going to come out from the time I was a child. It was just going to come out. And so my daughter-in-law, we've had many discussions around it, but it was like an instinct. It was just something I probably should have gotten counseling for it or something. I don't know.
That's a lot to carry around. I can even hear it in your voice now.
Yes, it was a very big fear of mine. And I did not have the same fear with my daughter and my son, because I wondered what it would be like. She was the first one to get married. I wondered what it would be like to have a in-law, like to have a married child. Like, do you not see them as much? Is it weird? What are their sibling relationships going to be like? Am I going to feel like I can call anytime? Can I stop by? Yes, there was that kind of thing, but it was more of a wondering. It wasn't anticipation of loss. So that was my feelings leading up to becoming a mother-in-law.
Wow.
I appreciate your thoughts on that, because we have generational baggage. All of us have it. You don't quite know what it's going to look like. And then the thing about fear, and Julie, you've already said the word expectations. Like, these are major things that you don't realize come to the surface. And you don't know, Marie, that you need counseling, right? You think that this is just the way it is because that's how your family was. But being able to manage expectations, and like Julie said from the beginning, I love that perspective of, if we can just expect them to be good, if you can come at it from that perspective, well, that would have changed so much. But you just don't know what battles you have that are ingrained and that are so heavy to bear. And I appreciate your testimony on this, because I have had a lot of comments from people that I have 3 sons. And I thankfully know to shake it off now, because that is the pervading perspective. Oh, just wait till you have daughters-in-law. You've got a great relationship with your son-in-law, but but doom is coming. And I'm like, no, I'm expecting to be able to take these girls on a girl trip. I'm expecting to plan some amazing things for all the girls in our family. And I'll tell you, even Abby and I have to prepare Abby for having a sister-in-law. She's been the only girl. Like, this is a unique situation for our family to have so many boys, but we are going to expect good. I am praying about this. And anytime somebody teases me, I'm like, I'm praying about that and I'm looking forward to it. I'm like, and then I tell the boys, don't mess it up.
Yeah, just shut it down at the beginning. I mean, that's a terrible thing to pass on, and I don't know, maybe because I didn't have a mother-in-law, I just feel like the Lord blessed me with a good picture of my mother and her in-laws, because my grandmother
Mm.
was just the greatest woman ever. And my mom just talks about how they just welcomed her in from the beginning. My mom was far from home and, and she
Mm.
was just a great mother-in-law to her. So I'm thankful for that because I just didn't really have a lot of fear going into it.
Mhm.
And I have 2 sons, so, potential for 2 daughter-in-laws, but
Yeah. Well, I would say that I do have a good relationship with my mother-in-law, Steve's mom. There's never been any reason for me to fear the mother-in-law relationship from that side, but I guess that just points out how powerful your family of origin is.
Right.
And you can't even necessarily name it. It's just there.
mhm.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so I hope listeners, if you are fearing becoming a mother-in-law, you keep listening. Or even if you're not fearing it, you can find out. Because I think we have really good experiences to share here. We really do. All right, so let's go into some of the nitty-gritty. So has it always been smooth sailing? Because I think even if you went into it with the most positive attitude ever, it's human relationships and it's different personalities and it's different families of origin. So, has it always been smooth sailing? What are some of the things that you've had to work out?
I'll say it's not always been smooth sailing because you don't really know where you're going at first. Like you've
Mm,
had this engagement season, you've had the prep time of planning the wedding, you have the wedding, and the whole time you're just kind of like, I just don't really know what after the wedding is going to look like. And so, just with my short experience, our daughter's been married to Joey for just about 4 years now. And I would say the first 6 months to a year was an adjustment time for all of us. And it wasn't bad, but it wasn't smooth. There was a lot of kind of, Bryce and I talking and tiptoeing, like, we're not really sure. How often should we call? Do we wait, to check on them? We don't really want to put a lot of pressure for them to visit all the time. We shouldn't visit them all the time. Where's our bound? How often are we going to see them?
mm-hmm,
Don't ask certain questions, wait to be asked. So you're learning that. I would say again, because our daughter married Joey, my husband had a bigger adjustment knowing what his role was going to be in Abby's life. I got to kind of stay the same. So maybe she stopped calling me less and she started, depending way more. And that was really a beautiful transition. But I noticed it. I noticed she didn't call as often. And I was thankful because I knew she was then running to her husband. My husband didn't know where he fit.
mm-hmm,
And so it took Abby and Joey, them coming home several times and us kind of doing vacation one time. We do a big family thing once a year for that relationship to kind of find a balance and for my husband to be at peace and like, oh, I've just added another friend. He didn't take Abby away. He's joined our family. So for all of us, I would say it took a good year and then it just keeps getting better and better now.
mm-hmm. How about you, Julie? Have you had adjustments that you've had to work out?
Of course we have, like it's just you just work, you just wonder how you fit in. You just have to watch and see where you're supposed to show up and not show up and
Mm-hmm,
and I don't think my daughter would mind me sharing this example, but in I think it was their first year of marriage, we get a call from my son-in-law that my daughter's in the hospital having an emergency appendectomy. They'd just been to our house Easter weekend and she was not feeling well and she thought she had a stomach virus and we sent her on home thinking,
mm-hmm.
this will pass. And it just never did. So they went to the hospital. So she was apparently in surgery when he called. So John and I just threw on our clothes and just went.
Mm-hmm.
It was like a 2.5 hour drive. And when we got there, Molly was waking up and she's like, "What are you doing here?"
Mm,
And I don't know, it just surprised me. Like, was I not supposed to be here?
Mm.
And I even offered to stay a whole week. We had driven in one car and I was like, Dad could just leave me here and come back and get me and I'll just take care of you, do your grocery shopping, just I'll cook y'all's meals, everything. And I ended up not doing that at their request. And that was a really hard thing for me. We never even really talked about it because that was one of those things like that I had to just let go
Mm.
because I assumed that it was, it could have been misinterpreted as I didn't think Colin knew how to take care of my daughter. That was not it at all. It was, I just wanted
Right.
to be with my daughter,
Mm-hmm.
but
Right.
maybe that was misinterpreted. So those are kind of things like just knowing when you're needed or wanted is hard. It's
Mm-hmm.
hard to know.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
now their distance is so far that takes care of a lot of issues. There's no chance of me dropping in unannounced. There's no,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to be too
Yeah.
much because I can't be.
Mm-hmm.
But it kind of creates other issues of, I just feel more distant
Mm-hmm.
from them in
Right.
general.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like how often we're going to see them. And I've kind of let that go because that seems stressful for them to always be telling me when we're going to see them next. So it's like, okay,
Right.
I'm seeing
Mm-hmm.
you now. This is good. And I'll see you when I see you. But that's not
Mm-hmm.
easy.
Well, Julie, I do have kind of a funny story that relates with that. When Bryce and I were first married on our end, my mom used to always, like from the time I was little, she'd slip me a little cash, like mad cash. You know what I mean? Like just a little bit. Well, after I got married, I didn't think anything of it, and neither did she. And she'd slip me some cash. Well, Bryce saw, and he was like, "What? Like, what is that?" And he was offended. He was like, "I can provide for you." We were very young, but he was like, "I can provide for you. Like your mom doesn't have to give you money." Well, I nor she thought about that at all.
Yeah.
All right. Well, many years have passed, and he's like, "Hey, your mom can slip you some money anytime."
I know.
Just say that had to grow.
Yes, I did when I was kind of researching the topic. I did read about people on Reddit saying, my parents gave me a gift card and the husband said, well, we don't need that. I can provide for, and it's like, that was never the intention. Like
Right.
you don't quit wanting to do for your child.
Mm-hmm.
It's
That's
not out of
right.
necessity. It's out of love.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking probably one of the biggest things that we've had to work out are holidays because Nick's family lives locally and Maddie's family lives locally. So even though Maddie and Davis have moved to Baltimore in the last year, when they come, both sides of the family are local. And then every holiday, Nick's sides of the family are local. So there's always a lot of juggling. And that has been something to work out on our side, and I'm sure on their side too, because they haven't felt the need to say, okay, you get 1 year, they get 1 year. They try to do both, which I love, but I know that that's more stressful on them. And I know that that may not be able to be continued in perpetuity. Like it just may become too stressful. So every year I take it as, well, here's one more year that we get to do this, but I don't know if we'll get to do it forever. So there is some juggling around the holiday issue. Vacations, there can be juggling around vacations too. Like, are we going to take a full family vacation? Is it okay to just take a vacation with my son and daughter-in-law and then a different vacation with just my daughter and son-in-law? Is it okay to just take my 3 kids that are left at home on vacation and not include anybody else? Like vacations have been something, I don't know that we've had a lot of overt conversations. I think they've just kind of developed the way they've developed out of necessity, but we have made comments about it and tried to let people understand our thinking behind it or how it came about. Communication, I don't think we have a lot of communication issues just because we tend to be a talkative family and we wear our emotions close to the surface. So we probably couldn't keep it buried very long. But I know that, like my son-in-law, for instance, he's a peacemaker and we can sometimes run roughshod over his preferences because he doesn't say something. And then we might find out later he actually did have a preference and we didn't honor that because we take him to be so easygoing that, oh, is he really going to care? You know what I'm saying? So like we have to get used to even listening to the quietest members of the family because we don't have any other peacemakers. We don't have any other Enneagram 9s in our family. so it's easy to run over him, not on purpose. We just don't even notice. So there's just always things that you have to work out. I wouldn't say there's been anything big and serious, and certainly not to the level that my anxiety imagined. But there's
Right.
always going to be things. There will be things now until the end of our relationships because we're all humans.
Yeah, and I do think it's important to learn. I mentioned one time that I had him do a personality test before a total family vacation, where everybody was going.
Mhm.
And that really did help me understand my son-in-law, because we don't really have his personality type in the family. Maybe David a little bit, but so it helped me understand why he chose certain things on the trip, to
Mhm.
stay behind and not go to dinner. It wasn't because he was hurt or couldn't stand us any longer. It was that
Yeah.
he needs downtime. He needs alone time.
Mhm.
Right.
And so that was fine.
Right.
Mhm. Yeah. I definitely think personality quizzes, I mean, they're not perfect, but they give you insight into people, and
Mhm.
that's really what you need. You
Right.
really need to understand that there's different personalities, and you've lived with certain personalities forever, so you forget there's other ones out there.
Mhm.
Right. Well, and that's kind of a fun thing to do when you're together because, if you can learn about them, then they too can learn about you and you can talk about it, like you said, Marie, if everyone can talk about it, we have two people that tend to be somewhat more quiet in our family and we will have had a whole conversation and moved on and realized like they never said a word. We're like, oh, like everybody just ran over them.
Mhm.
So I do understand that. And right now, we have a pretty good balanced approach to vacations and things like that. Sometimes because we have a gap in ages between the first set of children and the second set of children, like I definitely got called out not that long ago when I texted one son about going to the beach. He was with his older brother, and I never texted and even invited his older brother. Jacob's like,
Oops.
so Grant, did you get this text? He's like, no, mom did not invite me to the beach because I didn't even think about it. Like he's saying, it just was so funny because Jacob and happened to be together when I sent the text to invite Jacob.
Yeah.
So yes, things like this happen. I totally got called out on it. I was like, actually, you are invited. I just didn't even think because like he's adulting so much. Like he's not in college right now. Anyways.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Don't assume, right? Don't assume anything. And then the other thing is our family, we have our son-in-law and his mom is in Michigan. So she is quite a distance away. And so he actually is able to come to all of kind of our family functions. But from the beginning, I didn't want Abby and Joey to feel pressure to do everything with us on our timeline. So I do try to respect. I'm like, okay, when are you going to go see Sandra? Like, I just want you to come. At some point, all of us can be here at the same time, maybe, but also managing my own expectations. That's not going to always happen. And I also realized that this will not continue. This is for the season right now. As we add people, this will change.
Mhm.
One thing I wanted to say on Marie, you had said it kind of takes time to find your rhythm.
Mhm.
And I just think, and this is mainly what I've seen from watching my husband and parents, is that there's plenty of years that are going to bring opportunity for growth in that relationship. I know my parents and my husband didn't see eye to eye on a lot of things when we first got married, but they really learned through aging, through job change, moves, vacations together, holidays, like to truly love each other. And I think that at first, you're only knowing your in law kid through the eyes of your child.
Mhm.
And they only know you through the eyes of your child, but over time, they're going to get to know you for who you are,
Mhm.
know them for yourself, not just someone else's perception of you,
Mhm.
Right.
Well, let's talk a little bit about how you relate with the parents of your son or daughter-in-law. Because not only do you gain a son or daughter-in-law, but you also have the opportunity to get to know this whole other side of a family. And I think that I've always had good examples of this. Like my mom and my mother-in-law used to get together and go shopping every Friday. I mean, we've always been comfortable doing holidays together if that's how it worked out. I know my sister's in-laws well. They're at all the family birthday parties. They know my kids. They've known my girls since they were babies. Like, I know my brother's in-laws well. We've gone on camping trips with them. They invite us to their Labor Day family picnics. Like, I've always had examples of in-laws getting along and spending time together. I feel like it's like another friend to talk to at the party. It's like your age, your perspective. So like I enjoy talking with Nick's mom. We've spent a lot of time together. We've spent several holidays together. We've had her over for Christmas Eve, Easter. We've spent 4th of July together. I've invited her for Mother's Day. We've spent several, now that there's grandchildren, we've spent several baby showers together, kids' birthdays together. She's easy to talk to. I feel like we have a lot in common. I've loved visiting her at her house, seeing all the projects that she does. Like, I just feel like we have had a good relationship. I don't know Maddie's mom as well. We haven't had the opportunity to spend as much time together, but she's also very easy to talk to. I feel like we have a lot of things in common. We raised our kids in the exact same community. They both went to the same high school. We just have a lot in common. And so I think that as time goes on and grandchildren join the picture, I hope that it's that kind of relationship where we're comfortable seeing each other at baby showers and going to kids' birthdays together and spending the odd holiday together. And, now they live in Baltimore. And if we both wanted to go for a thing and we were both there at the same time, I hope it would be viewed as just a bigger party and not a burden. Like, I consider the other in-laws as potential friends. So I think that it's like a bonus. So I have had good examples of that. And I feel like I want to create that in my own in-law relationships, if that makes sense.
Okay, so our relationship with our son-in-law's mom, there's a lot of distance there. And so also just his family dynamic is very different from ours. So honestly, like we don't interact with Sandra very much. We were able to meet her in person at their wedding, but we've never seen her in person otherwise. And so right now, we really don't have that opportunity to get to know like our son-in-law's parents. And so I assume there will be, in the future more of that type of interaction. So the only thing I really have to pull from is just my own experience with my parents and my in-laws. And honestly, they never really even matched up. The first time they were all together was kind of our wedding. And then honestly, years passed and it was Abby's graduation and we all hosted the entire family in our home. And that was such a beautiful celebration of all of the family. Marie, it was a bigger party. But it a lot of years. I mean, Abby was 18 years old before we had the bigger party. And so it just took a lot of time to kind of get everybody and for them to even feel like we wanted to have them together. And so we always just had intimate time either with Bryce's mom or with my parents. And so that's really all I have to pull from in this regard.
I also enjoy Molly's in-laws. Like they are wonderful people and they're really fun to be with. They're a fun family and they're a big family, but there's so much geographical distance between us that I have such limited time with my daughter, like 2 or 3 days at a time. And I'll admit that it's really hard to want to share those days with anybody else. It's not who they are. It's just with anybody else.
Yeah.
And then lately that's even been further complicated by missing John, like being there alone.
Right.
It's just been hard.
Yeah. So I think listeners, you can hear that there's just a wide variety of experiences around extended in-laws. And also, I think there's, like Julie said, there's a lot of years. And however the extended in-law relationship is right this moment, it's going to change through the birth of kids, through mostly through grandchildren, all the grandchild milestones, when you think of all there are bound to bring a lot of different family changes. And then, death of spouses, moving, different life circumstances. I mean, there are a lot of years. So like when you consider like the lifespan of a marriage, all of us are on the earlier end with our kids. Like They've
Yeah.
all been married for 10 years or less. So there's still a long time for these
Right.
things to morph into other things.
Right.
Yeah, what it looks like today may not be what it looks like tomorrow, and hopefully it's just always improving.
Yeah, I saw
Yes.
that with my mom. Like, as my mom has aged, she has grown to depended on John so much. Like, she truly valued his opinion, his wisdom. She actually trusted him with her life, like during health crisis, during financial things. And John really loved and respected her. I mean, and he even welcomed her into our home. And,
Mhm.
Right.
like at the very beginning, I couldn't have really seen that happening.
Mhm.
Like, so yeah, lots of things to bring that relationship about.
Mhm.
Oh, yes.
Lots of years.
All right, well, what is some advice you would give to women who are about to become a mother-in-law? One of the most important pieces of advice I would give, and you don't even know if you're going to become a mother-in-law yet, but your son is dating someone, you need to treat every girl as a potential daughter-in-law. I don't care if they're in 9th grade. You treat her as a potential daughter-in-law. Everything you say is going to go directly from your mouth to her ears via your son. Don't ever think that your son is not repeating absolutely everything you say. Only most likely he is repeating it, but like your tone of voice, some of your wording, the way you said it is getting lost in translation. So do not set yourself up for failure. Set yourself up for success by treating every girl like they could potentially be your daughter-in-law someday.
And what you mean is watch your words. Like,
Yes.
not necessarily that
Yeah.
you view them as a daughter-in-law, but just being careful what you criticize
Yes.
or point out. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Be welcoming, include them in all you can include them, speak highly of them.
Ask their opinion.
Yes. Yes.
Mhm.
Integrate them into the sibling relationships. Like you just
Yes.
want to always know that this is a potential daughter-in-law and she's hearing things through your son. And you know your son is not the best communicator.
True.
Well, and out of context.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
The wise words.
I just have always tried to include them and make them feel like part of the family. Like, now my son's girlfriend is in our family chat, and just it
Mhm.
would feel weird to leave her out,
Mhm.
Right.
and I don't know if she enjoys it or not, but she does comment, she does.
Mhm.
And just to be interested in things that they're interested in and try to get to know them and what makes them tick. And then one thing I would say is I pray for them. I
Right.
pray for them like they're my own children, because if they're your in-law, they really are one of the family then,
Mhm.
And
Right.
this is some advice that I heard probably before my kids were married, but just that whoever your son chooses or your daughter chooses, to remember that that person has qualities that your child loves and finds they're finding some fulfillment in this relationship, and they chose to love them, and for that reason alone, regardless of what you think, then you're better off honoring and loving them.
Mhm.
And when criticisms come up in your mind, just keep those shut, keep those to yourself, because that's just going to get in the way of your
Right.
relationship. And, like if you're criticizing your son-in-law or daughter-in-law to your child, you're just putting your child in a position to make a choice.
Right.
And they're going to choose their spouse. Rightfully so. They should
Mhm.
choose.
Right.
So don't put yourself in that position.
Mhm.
And I thought that was just really, really good advice.
Mhm.
The word of wisdom that I can speak here is just my own experience of when Bryce and I were dating, and then we were getting married, and I was 18 and he was 20. My mother-in-law, Carol, had a lot of fear for Bryce. It's a very young age for your son to get married. She was struggling in her own marriage at the time, and she had a lot of anxiety. She didn't really know what to do with that. And so when she would go to the dentist, she would voice her fear and anxiety to the dentist. And then I would go to the dentist.
Oh my gosh.
And they would be like, "Oh, you're Bryce's girlfriend.
Oh my goodness, this is
You're
a very
Bryce's
small town.
fiance." Yes. So then, unfortunately, I had that experience a few places around town.
Oh,
Okay. So Bryce clearly chose me. And there was a long time I had to become an advocate for, I'll say at that time, a woman that I didn't think liked me or accepted me. That was the very beginning of my relationship. And God changed my heart. And over time, I've talked about this before, but praying for my mother-in-law, we have a wonderful relationship now. She has always been a part of our family, but I had to become her advocate because Bryce chose me over this, like, because this is how it started. And so I'm just saying, like, for moms of sons, I'm watching this happen too, and thinking towards my sons, like, try to not voice your fear to people, or put your future daughter-in-law in a situation that's very difficult. There was no cancel culture back then, and I wouldn't have canceled her. But our beginning was really hard because that happened. And so this is something that we can laugh about now. We're very close now. We've had a thriving relationship now. She's always been a part of our family and her grandchildren's lives. But it was a tough start because fear was speaking.
Yeah, and I'm sure that was not easy for you at all. But just think of how drastically different that relationship could be, Mindy, if you had let that turned into bitterness and resentment. And
yes, yes.
That leads into another piece of advice I have is that mistakes will be made. I mean, they just will. Confess them, apologize, and ask for forgiveness. And I have had to do this on multiple occasions. I'm not saying they've been huge things, but I took my daughter-in-law out for her birthday a couple years after they'd been married, and I apologized for the trepidation that I went into over their wedding. It had been a couple years, but it would still come up as like a sore spot in my mind of like, I hope she understands. I think we talked about last week how I always want to be understood. And I just wanted her to understand that it was nothing about her. It would have been anybody. It just was like pre-programmed into me. And she was so gracious. And she has said multiple times that she understands. And then that brought up something of a hurt that she had had over some Thanksgiving plans because she had followed the advice of have the son communicate with the son's family and the daughter communicate with the daughter's family. Only the son is not the best communicator. And so things got lost in translation and the Thanksgiving plans didn't go down as smoothly as possible. And she kind of felt like they were like an afterthought to fitting in. And I was prioritizing when my daughter could come. But it was because my son had seemed so lackadaisical, like he almost didn't even care if they were come. So I thought that was the way she felt. So like I was so thankful that we were able to like talk about this. And now when we talk about holiday plans, they're both on the text so that she can see what's happening and like translate. And I feel better about it because I know that now everybody's on the same page. So like there's going to be different things that come out over time that you have the opportunity to cry over, laugh over. They'll go down in the family history lore as things that we're glad we got past or learning experiences. And I think you're actually closer for having talked about them. And so I would say if you've made a mistake or you've done something that you feel like you need to apologize for, go ahead and do it.
Yeah. And on the communication thing, I've said this before that if it involved plans or someone's thoughts on something, I always tried to include my daughter-in-law with my son, just because I wanted her to feel included, wanted her to feel a part of things. And it's just natural to want to just text your own child, but that can come across as maybe their opinion doesn't matter or whatever,
Right.
And usually, and this is not true of every case, like my son's pretty detail oriented, but a lot of times the wife is the one that keeps the calendar or the schedule and knows more about their plans, so
Right.
I don't know. I just try to talk to both of them
Very wise.
now.
Yeah. So my daughter-in-law was one of the women throwing a baby shower for my daughter last summer. And so she was there and we all had a great time getting ready for it. It was such a fun experience. And someone at the party, Maddie and I were standing near each other, and someone at the party said something about Maddie and Davis moving and said like, oh, basically implying like, Marie, aren't you going to be so disappointed, or that's going to be so hard, or basically that I should feel bad or like almost kind of make them feel bad for moving. And I said, without really thinking about it, but Maddie was right near me and she sent me a letter later. I said like, oh no, I think this is a good thing. This is Maddie's dream job. I'm happy for them. She's always wanted to work at Johns Hopkins. Like, this is something that they're excited about, and we will go up and see them. It'll be a new place to visit. And I didn't really think about that. But later she sent me a nice note and basically saying, thank you for championing me. Like, thank you for not making me the bad guy in a move and not making it about losing something. And, like, I just felt really glad that I had championed her. And I guess I would say champion your daughter-in-law. Like, stick up for her, talk well of her, help her achieve her dreams, cheer her on.
Right.
It's a really great thing to do.
Mm-hmm. Good job.
Oh, great job, Marie. I will say with my son-in-law, one thing I learned as Abby is my daughter, that if she asks my opinion, my first response is, what does Joey think?
I do often ask that. And then I'll even ask, well, what do your parents think? Because I want to make sure I know what everybody thinks.
I need to know what I'm walking into. Also, I'm going to agree with Joey. And no, so I just really try to make sure, kind of like you mentioned, Julie, including them, talking about her and Joey together. They're both on the family text, asking his opinion, list his opinion, all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
One other thing I would say is if the couple makes a decision that maybe you don't understand or don't agree with, don't assume it was your in-laws' decision. It might have been your child's, like, because that could definitely come across in your attitudes toward them if you think they're the only ones that would do anything you disagree with,
Right.
It could be your child.
It's your own kid.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I've mostly talked about the advice from the perspective of a daughter-in-law, but I will just say, and this is true for my daughter and my son, and maybe I don't think I'm alone in this, that it took me a while to accept that I'm second. I'm not the first to hear things anymore. Like, the first time I really noticed it was my son went to a camp to work when he was 15, and you only got your phone once a week, and I was the first call he made on Saturdays. Then when he went a few years later as a counselor after dating Maddie for a few months, I realized I'm not the first call anymore. And like, I noticed it. Like, he would allude to the fact that he'd already talked to Maddie, and that is totally appropriate. But you have to learn to accept that you are second. Your opinion is second. And actually, the longer they're married and the more people involved in their lives, you might be third or fourth on an opinion. You might be the fourth call.
I was going to say, I kind of like that. It's a relief.
So, just accept that things change. Don't try to hold on to everything exactly the way it's always been, because it's age appropriate and stage of life appropriate for things to change. And in some cases, like Julie's saying, sometimes you're glad not to be the one making the decision or the first call anymore.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not responsible anymore.
Right.
Right.
Let me know how it all works out.
Yes.
But I think the biggest piece of advice I would have is assume good intentions. And I said this in the Let Them episode last week. Like, we need to assume good intentions.
And let me add here, the power of prayer and time and forgiveness and love and choosing something different. Because I mentioned the start of my marriage and my rocky kind of start with my mother-in-law. I realized that relationship was going to last. And I didn't like how it started. And so that took me a journey of active choosing different and praying for her. And then starting to get to know her as a person, as a woman, understanding where she was coming from. Once I understood those things and got to know her, I had so much compassion and so much gratitude that was built for her and a love that grew that wasn't there before. And so I think my advice here is if you don't like where you're at, it can change. Start praying for opportunity, praying for healing, praying for restoration, and then just kind of look and see what happens. Because that's the approach that I ended up taking. And I can say the Lord brought us and knit us together in a way that wasn't there before.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say on the assuming the best, as far as hurt feelings go, and I'm talking about unintentional hurt, just like from maybe me assuming the worst or, like causing my own.
Right.
That it is best to just let them, like we've talked about in our book. And, and John would say this over and over to me is it's not about us. It's not about you. It's not. And I realize that, and I really miss him saying that to me because I've got no one to give me perspective anymore, like to remind me, to keep it all in perspective.
Right.
Well, let's talk a little bit about our in-law kids. What are some of your favorite things about them or things that you've learned about them? I would say that I love seeing my son-in-law as a dad. Like, he's always been a great husband, but now I get to see him be a great father too. He's very involved. I don't know if it's just this generation or just him, but like he makes the doctor's appointments. He knows who their doctor is. Like, this is new information for me because Steve has never made a kid's doctor appointment in his life. Nick makes dinner like almost all the time. He is super in awe of Abigail and the kids, and I love seeing that. Like, when their first child was born, it was the year of COVID, so we were down there all the time. And we would just sit and look at Pepper. I mean, there was nothing going on in the world. We could just sit and look at her. And one time, Nick and I were sitting on the couch next to her. One of us was holding her. I don't even remember who, but we were sitting next to each other and looking at her on our laps. And he turned to me and he said, "Isn't she beautiful?" And I almost started crying right there because he was so serious and sincere and amazed by her. And that was so moving to me. And I have an opportunity to go on an extended family trip to Europe this summer, and Steve wasn't able to go. And I thought maybe Abigail can go with me, but she has 3 kids under the age of 5. Like, I'm probably going to ask her and she's probably going to say no, but you never know unless you ask. And I asked her if she wanted to go, and Nick was there when I asked her, and he was joking at lunch and saying, "No way, she is not going. I'm not going to watch the kids. If she goes to Europe, I'm going to Europe." And, just kind of joking.
Yeah.
And I just kind of put it out of my mind. There's no way she's going to be able to go. On the way home, he sent me a text saying, "Abigail doesn't know this yet, but she is going on this trip. I'm going to watch the kids. She can't miss this opportunity." I am so impressed. There are not many dads that would take off from work for 10 days and watch 3 kids under the age of 5 while their daughter goes to Europe. Like, he is an awesome dad and an awesome husband. So I know he doesn't listen to the podcast, and I know I've told him this in person, but Abigail, play this for him because it is so true.
Oh.
And then I would just say, like, the things that I enjoy about Maddie. So we talked about the Enneagram a little. Nick is a 9 and Maddie is a 2, and we don't have either one of those in our family. But the 2 is the helper, and she lives up to her name. She is so kind and compassionate and understanding and empathetic. She's a PA, and I always think about how lucky her patients are. Like, during the summer of 2020, she worked on the COVID ward doing the lowest of the low work. Like, this was before she went to PA school. I mean, she was changing bedpans, changing diapers. I mean, and the stories she described, like how she had to suit up and the things she had to do. And like, she would be the only one around to like move these people and change them because they had such short staffing. And I don't know if I could have done it. And she did it with a happy heart, a compassionate spirit. If I was laying in that bed, I would thank my lucky stars that Maddie was taking care of me. Like, she is a wonderful person, and she's very kind and forgiving. She doesn't hold things against people or write them off. She's a wonderful wife to my son. Like, she's always supportive, and she balances him in ways that I know that he needs. Like, they are great together. And I know that she's going to be wonderful as a mother too. Like, she's going to bring those qualities. And I just love that I can go through life feeling confident about my son-in-law and my daughter-in-law. Like, I feel confident in their care of my kids and my grandchildren and our family as a whole. Like, I just love what they've added. Like, where I feared would only be loss, there's only been gain. And I just can't say it enough.
Oh, it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. I have to say, as I was preparing for this episode and thinking about our Joey, I started kind of, contemplating our relationship with him. And as I did, my gratitude just grew and grew and grew and grew. And even though he is a CPA in the middle of tax season right now, I had to text him and thank him for who he is and who he is to our family. But when you bring someone into the family, they're going to add a new dimension, a new flavor, a new perspective. They'll have different inside jokes and they won't understand yours. And I have to say, like, everything that Joey has done for our family has been for the better. Bryce and I, we said we didn't even know, we weren't wise enough to pray for Joey and all of the ways that God has blessed us with Joey. He's very built. I'll say physically, he's beautiful. It goes so much more than skin deep. But like, you look at him and he's a force to be reckoned with. And then you talk to him and you realize how kind, how generous, how intelligent he is. He is the epitome of meekness. He is strength under control, and he is absolutely in love with my daughter. And to see the way that he looks at Abby, to see the way that he loves Abby, now almost 4 years later, to see how she's better for being his wife in their new little family unit of two. They are their own people. And in fact, because we only have one daughter, she's the only one that was going to change her name. And their last name is Bird. So we call ourselves together the Silly Birds.
Oh, that's
so
funny.
We are now known as the Silly Birds, not just the Silmans. But Joey's the most dedicated, loyal, consistent. He's up early. He's doing CrossFit. He's making food. Abby wouldn't mind me saying this. He's the better cook. He's doing meal prep. He's healthy. He's like all of us. As we've gotten to know Joey, he has captured all of us. He's become one of Bryce's favorite friends in the whole world. Bryce gets so excited when Joey's going to come visit. And each of my sons looks up to Joey. That was no small feat right there. This is the miracle part. For each of my sons to see Joey and the view that they see him, he's a role model to them and he's worthy of their respect. But he has joined us and he has changed us. He's changed us for the better. He got us off of eating margarine and eating butter. And that's a family joke now. He has taught my husband that wearing Lulus is a very manly thing. And so if Joey can pull off a pair of Lulus, well, so can my boys. And so unfortunately or fortunately, he's added Lululemon in the boy category here. And now all my sons and husband like it. He dresses impeccably. All of the ways that he works out, all of us kind of watch and learn. And so we all kind of joke when we grow up, we want to be like Joey. But just in a nutshell, we're just so abundantly blessed by him and how God has changed us all through that relationship. And that leads me to praying for my future daughters-in-law, because we have been just so blown away and abundantly blessed. And so I could have never imagined a relationship like this. And it's just brought so much of a new dimension to all of us.
That's great, Mindy. Yeah, that's really, really neat. I love seeing the pictures of you with Joey in there. And Yeah, I think he is the most muscular of all the men in your family.
All of my boys, they're all jealous.
That's funny. Well, I will say that I wish that we were all more engaged with my son-in-law. Like, I don't know if it's the distance, but I do long for that. I feel like that's maybe something a little missing in our family. I do pray for my son-in-law. I love him. I respect him, honor him. I'm thankful for who he is, how he loves my daughter. And like you, Marie, I just am amazed watching him as a dad. My daughter could leave the kids with him and probably not even leave instructions. I just remember writing pages of instructions down for John and having to tell him where basic things were and leave phone numbers. And I think he's just in tune with their needs equally as she is. So she has there's just no worry about leaving the kids with him. Like, he's just a great dad. And I really appreciate that. And it's fun to watch because it's just so different from our generation, He's loyal, he's tenderhearted, and he loves Molly and he loves his kids well. And so I'm really thankful for that. And I will take this opportunity to say something about my son's girlfriend. She's not my daughter-in-law, but I said I view her as a daughter-in-law, and I think someday she will be. But she's just been a really great asset to our family. Like, she kind of started coming around right before John got sick. So she really only knew our family in that season of life. And she just ministered to John. I mean, she just did so many things for him, but she just truly jumped in and loved us in a way that I didn't think you could in such a short time. And she's been fun to kind of, develop a new relationship with. Son-in-law relationship is a little awkward because the main thing you have in common is your daughter, and you don't necessarily share things in common with another man. It's just, but with a daughter-in-law,
Right.
This is someone else you can have lunch with, coffee with, do crafts with, and so that I've appreciated that. She's very crafty. She makes me things all the time. She's a bird watcher. So she's gotten me interested in birds. She knows every bird by sound, by sight. She takes beautiful pictures of birds. So that's just kind of opened up. That's an area that I'm interested in as well now. And I never was before,
Right.
But I just find that kind of intriguing. So, and she takes care of Andrew well and loves him. And so I really do appreciate her.
Yeah. Yeah. Are there any things that you would like to improve or get better at?
I already kind of shared the improve. Like, I would like to be more engaged with my son-in-law, but I have noticed that when I have needed help and ask his opinion on something he's good at, he's much more open and he's very willing to help and very there. He's all in, but I'm trying to find those ways, to engage him. And I think that needing your son-in-law is a good way, it's a good road in. And I think that was kind of what happened with my mom and my husband is as she aged, she needed him more and depended on him more. And he was happy to do that. So, I don't know if you can find a way into your son-in-law's interest or what he's good at, that helps.
I like that idea. I do think when you need someone, your relationship grows in a new way. And I was thinking about even just simple things like if we've needed Nick's help moving, or I know like I've needed Nick's help before, like taking Isaac to a Vanderbilt game, or, just different things that you need someone's help with, that grows your relationship. And then as far as your daughter-in-law, like working together, like even if you're working together, like I talked about that baby shower, or if you're working together to create a holiday meal or anything, like your relationship grows. So I definitely think that it's good to get to the point where sometimes the relationship is reciprocal in that, yeah, your kids still need things from you, but you also need things from them. Okay, are there any resources that you guys can recommend other than our podcast episode? I would say do not go on TikTok or Instagram because you will immediately fall into the depths of despair because I don't know why I see 99 people complaining about their mother-in-law and one praising her. So I would say do not go on social media if you're looking for resources on how to have a great relationship.
I will say I have one resource that I like on Instagram, and it's called, I think I might have mentioned it before. It's called More Than Grand. Now, this is speaking to grandparents.
Okay.
But so much of it could apply even if you didn't have children. She's just a very wise, gentle woman. And she's always erring on the side of like, keep your mouth shut, don't offer advice, respecting your child's wishes as far as, and we didn't really get into this, but when children come, it does change a lot of things. Like there's just more areas, there's more gray areas, there's more areas to cause potential, has the potential to cause conflict. And she's just a very wise woman, on when to offer advice and being careful not to interfere and just respecting parents' wishes. So I think that has been very valuable.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, Julie, because in the cesspool, there are some redeeming accounts that could be helpful.
Yes. Check that one out.
Okay. Yeah. All right, listeners, we would love to hear from you on this topic. I know that many of you have asked us about it, but we'd also love to hear from any of you that have become a mother-in-law and what your experiences have been. Come and find us on Instagram at Midlife Matters Podcast, or you can email us at midlifematterspodcast@gmail.com. All right, Mindy and Julie, thank you for talking about this topic today. I know that I've learned things from you, and I know that we have a long time together to see these relationships grow.
Yep.
Yes. I'm thankful for the joy, hopefully the encouragement we could share today too. I really hope we can be a voice of encouragement.
Yes.
All
right, we'll talk to you next week.
All right, sounds great. Bye.
We're so happy you joined us today. You can find the show notes for this episode at midlifematterspodcast.com. Also, please tell a friend about the show and help them hit the free subscribe button on their favorite podcast app. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Midlife Matters Podcast. That's where we post pictures and stories about all the things we talk about in each episode. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.